Two tape cassettes sit behind glass at a consumer electronics store in the early 1980s. One is smaller, with a compact shell and a reputation for a sharper image. The other is larger, housed in a wider plastic case, its recording time printed in bold on the cardboard slipcase. A retail clerk stocks blank tapes and decides, every week, how many of each to reorder. The smaller format may look better, the larger one keeps selling. That gap between what measures well in a lab and what moves through a supply chain is where this story lives. By the late 1970s, the promise of home recording had become a product category. Manufacturers filled catalog pages with tabletop machines, a VCR front panel with mechanical buttons, a fluorescent channel display, and a coax cable snaking to a television set. The pitch was simple: record a broadcast, watch it later. Build a personal library on magnetic tape. The user manual described timer recording, explained standard play and long play mode settings, and came with a service hotline card tucked inside the box. Blank tape multipacks appeared in circular flyer layouts beside clock radios and portable stereos. For the first time, a household appliance could capture a live signal and hold it. That promise arrived split in two. Behind every showroom price tag sat a coordination problem: two incompatible cassette formats, the VHS cassette shell, backed by JVC and its licensees, and the Betamax cassette shell developed by Sony, meant that a tape recorded on one machine could not play on the other. The clear reel windows looked similar, but the cassette dimensions, deck mechanics, and tape paths belonged to separate systems. Betamax, by many accounts, delivered a visibly cleaner picture at its standard recording speed. On paper, it had the engineering advantage. On the shelf, engineering was only one variable among many. For a retailer, this incompatibility was pure inventory risk. Stocking both formats doubled the shelf space needed for blank tapes, doubled the number of machine models on the floor, and doubled the chance of returns from confused customers. A consumer who bought a VCR and then discovered the local store carried fewer compatible tapes had a reason to feel burned. Retail pressure alone did not pick the winner. It created the conditions. The force that tilted the balance was licensing, the decision to let other manufacturers build compatible machines. Sony kept tighter control over Betamax production. JVC licensed VHS more broadly, and the consequences showed up quickly. More licensees meant more manufacturers building compatible decks. More manufacturers meant more models at more price points, filling glass display cases from budget to premium. Each new brand name on a VCR front panel meant another slot in a retailer's catalog, another reason for a store buyer to allocate shelf space. Manufacturing capacity expanded in step with licensing. The installed base compounded all of it. Every additional household with a compatible deck made the format more attractive to content distributors. More titles appeared. Retailers stocked more tapes. The slipcases multiplied along the wall. A format that was already easier to find became easier still. Somewhere around the early 1980s, the competition stopped being open-ended. The gap in shelf presence, manufacturer count, and tape variety had grown wide enough that each new quarter reinforced the trend. A retailer ordering stock for the holiday season did not revisit the question from scratch. The holiday flyer already featured more VHS-compatible decks, and the catalog already ran longer for one format than the other. The market was beginning to tip, and the force driving it further was something no specification sheet could capture: recording time. A standard broadcast of a major sporting event or a primetime programming block could run 2 hours or longer. The format with the shorter maximum recording time at standard speed forced households to choose between image quality and capturing a full program. The rival format offered longer recording on a single cassette while still meeting ordinary household expectations. Recording time printed on blank tape packaging became a purchase decision in itself. Most households did not experience this as a format war. They experienced it as a simpler question: would the tape hold the whole game? That expectation fed directly back into the installed base. The format that better matched ordinary household use sold more decks, which attracted more content, which made the next purchase even easier to predict. Once a format leads in sales, it begins to lead in something less visible: the ability to stay in service. Tape-eating machines, decks where the pinch roller or the capstan mechanism pulled tape from the cassette and crumpled it inside the housing, generated repair tickets and warranty claims. The format with more manufacturers also had more authorized service centers and more available replacement parts, which meant shorter repair turnaround. A machine that could be fixed locally with a repair ticket stub and a reasonable estimate stayed in local service. One that required a longer wait or a more expensive part was more likely to be replaced, often by whatever the store had in stock at the best price. All of these forces fed into one final mechanism that made the outcome feel irreversible: rental stores. A mid-1980s rental store ran on simple inventory logic: stock what customers actually rent and return. One wall of tapes had to satisfy most walk-in customers. A membership card entitled a customer to browse the shelves, pick a plastic clamshell case, and carry it to the checkout counter. Behind that counter, barcode stickers tracked which titles moved and which sat idle. Stocking 2 formats for every title, halve the copies available per format, increased the chance of an out-of-stock shelf tag, and doubled the backroom tape bins needed for returns. Most rental operators, facing these economics, converged on the format with the larger customer base. The return slot filled with one cassette shell far more often than the other. Then the convergence hardened. Each new rental store that committed to a single format reduced the practical value of owning the alternative deck. Late fee stamp pads, rewind before return signs, and new release display racks all assumed a single standard. The format with the wider selection on the wall was the safer default, the choice that reduced decision costs for buyers, retailers, distributors, and rental operators at once. Betamax continued to hold value in professional and enthusiast circles for years. The format had genuine strengths. Many users and reviewers noted a tighter, more refined image at standard speed, and the compact cassette shell had real design appeal. In broadcast and industrial settings, beta-derived formats earned respect on their own terms. The technical argument never disappeared. It was settled by everything around it: the number of factories, the length of the tape, the price on the showroom tag, the breadth of the rental wall, the availability of a replacement pinch roller at the local service counter. By the late 80s, most buyers were no longer weighing 2 formats on equal terms. They walked into stores and rental shops that had already made the decision for them. VHS had become the default, reproduced by more factories, stocked by more retailers, rented by more customers, and serviced by more repair shops. The other format remained technically respected, but the wider market stopped carrying it. When a format becomes a supply chain, better becomes what scales. A standard wins when the rest of the market stops treating it as a choice.